It's very important for me to always remember that Round Lake comes from the dream of a man named Tinker Watt from, I believe, Omak, Washington. And Tinker's a friend of mine, and he was a friend of mine before I moved here. I knew him from just being around the Native community. And he's remained a friend over the years. And I think it's very important to honor his dream, that he had a dream to bring the elders together to seek knowledge of healing, for us to look at what we know and what we can use to help ourselves with. And he had the courage to share that dream and to bring the elders together and to share his dream with the elders. I believe it was in the Enderby Band Hall. And that night there in the Enderby Band Hall, the society was formed that eventually became the society that has developed Round Lake. For me, I think I'm probably at Round Lake because in 1978 I was invited to give a speech at Alkali Lake. And I think as a result of that talk there, and a year or so later, Emery Lewis called me and invited me to come to Round Lake. And when Emery first called, I didn't think I would come because I was living in Seattle at the time and I had a very rich life. I was attending ceremonies, I had a drum group, and I was going to powwows, and I owned an eighth of an acre outside of Seattle, and I had a little house and a nice sweat house behind my house. And I had a ceremonial life, and was really into it, really into the teachings and spending time with the elders and doing things. But several days later I came home. After I got the call from Round Lake, several days later I came home, and as I came into my driveway and walked under the old growth cedars that lined my driveway, I noticed sitting on my house a blue heron. As soon as I noticed it, it flew towards me, and I ducked down, and it went right over me. I could almost feel the wing or the air from the wing. And I turned to watch it fly under the cedars and leave my property. And then when I turned back towards my house disappeared. I couldn't see anything to any direction. I was standing in a void, in a grayness. And there was nothing. This only lasted a few seconds, but when things came back, I looked at my house and said to myself, you know, I'm leaving this place. I said to myself, I'm leaving everything. I'm going to Round Lake. And I left everything. I quit my job, and I came to Round Lake in a Chevy Malibu that was too powerful for the icy roads around here. And I went off the road 3 times the first winter and actually set my car on fire once, trying to get it out of the ditch, and almost ended up in the lake one time, but I eventually learned how to drive. And I came here. And I have had some relationship with Round Lake. Since then, when I first came here, Alice Clausen was the executive director and I was a treatment supervisor. The person that was a treatment supervisor for me, who has remained a friend of mine over the years and is a very good friend of mine, was Jerry Oldman, who does a lot of great work in Vancouver and works with the Residential School Healing Project now. And I believe that he was the original and first treatment director of Round Lake, Jerry Oldman from Lillooet. And then I was here for a year. I worked here for about a year as a treatment director. I developed the first treatment manual and helped to design the treatment process. Of course, Jerry had already done some work and continued the ceremonial aspect of the treatment center, mostly the sweats and the talking circles. And one of the great things about Round Lake is the belief that culture is treatment, which again comes from Tinker's dream. And to me, culture is treatment because it works. Not because it's our culture, but because the culture does work. Round Lake has actually done very well using the culture as treatment. Our success rate is high, and there have been many clients that have come here who, some of whom have even been adopted and had really no knowledge of who they were at all, that have had their identity strengthened, had their spirit strengthened, and have had good lives ever since then, and have went on to be elders and community leaders in their own right in various areas. Some have become well educated, some have become husbands and wives, and have just had a good life. So one of the great rewards of living or of working at Round Lake, one of the great rewards of working at Round Lake is to see clients years afterwards and to know that they have done well, that they're in school or that they're married, they have a family, that they've been a number of years since they've had a drink, and that they're on the good red road, and a good road of sobriety and well-being. And that's a true reward of working here. I've had various capacities. I was on the board of directors for 4 years, been a cultural resource person, and now every 6 weeks I come up and spend a day with the clients. In the morning I do a lecture on our history and kind of some of our material around prophecies and what we know about ourselves. And then in the afternoon we do a pipe ceremony and a prayer circle and try to make a future for ourselves through our ability to make prayers and focus on what is good in our life. I think for me, you know, the reason why culture as treatment works is that the culture as treatment addresses the identity of the client. And there are basically 5 things that we try to address: the person's self-concept, how they think about themselves; their self-esteem, how they feel about themselves; their self-image, how they see themselves; their sense of self-determination, their feeling about what they can become and what they can be; and their physical awareness, their feelings about their body and their looks and whatever kind of physical being they have. Many of the clients that come here have a very weakened sense of identity. And when a person has a weakened sense of identity, their energy is less, their ability to live life and to achieve is less. And what we do here at Round Lake, through the culture, through the ceremonies, through the elders, through the treatment process and interactions with counselors, the entire process is designed to strengthen that identity, to make a person come into a sense of holistic well-being and a sense of healthy self that they can build upon. So it is really the foundation for life. And I believe myself that you know, emotions become values, and that values become identity. And that values as expressions of energy, if the person's identity is strong, they have more energy to live a good life with. And what it is about here at Round Lake is essentially getting a good life. Here at Round Lake, it's essentially about getting a good life and having a sense of well-being. And the culture addresses that. It gives people a strong foundation for their life and their well-being. And that's very important. And once a person has that, the degree to which they can accomplish and learn speeds up, because they have more energy available to learn and to live life with. And that's why I think the culture and the ceremony and the use of elders is so important here at Round Lake. That's why it's important that culture is treatment. So I believe that Round Lake was one of many healing centers that has been created in the last 30 years that Native people have created for themselves to embrace healing and well-being. The first health issue that we addressed was alcohol, and now alcohol and drugs. And these healing centers have been a big success. We have become a much sober people than we are now. There are those people that say that Native people are now the most sober element of Canadian society. Many reserves are a lot more sober than the towns around them. And we have had great success. I think it's now time to carry Tinker's Dream to the next step. And to me, the next step means addressing other health issues. I would like to see the day come when we have a Round Lake that's focused particularly on cancer, or the cancer rates that are occurring in our community. Cancer was unheard of in Native communities until around 1950, and now our cancer rate is almost 48%, almost 1 in 2. Diabetes was unheard of in Native communities up until about 30 years ago. Now diabetes rates reigns in Native communities anywhere from 15 to 80%. In some American Indian communities, diabetes is 80% of the population. And I think it's time for us to follow Tinker's Dream and gather the elders together to see what we can do about these illnesses. What medicines do we have? What knowledges do we have that can address the cancer and the diabetes and the lupus and the other diseases that are coming into our communities that are relatively new to us, and to do that in a way that's beneficial not only to ourselves but to all human beings. I think that the fabric of the Native healing healthcare system that existed here before Columbus still exists. although it is not as strong as it once was, it is re-strengthening, and that Round Lake has been a part of that, and that the healing centers have been a part of that. And that as our fabric of our healing strengthens, as our ceremonies strengthen, as our herbal knowledge returns and strengthens, that we can apply that to other areas of health and well-being that we really need to address. Because as a general rule, human beings are becoming not as well as we were before. As the director of the Institute for Aboriginal Health at the University of British Columbia, I know that I have been told that the generation that's being born now will be the first generation in many generations to have a shorter lifespan than the generation before it because of the manifestation of illnesses in the communities of the world. And that I recently heard that of these four things, alcohol, drugs, tobacco, and food, the biggest threat to our children's health now is food. More diseases will be when the children that are being born now are seniors, there will be more diseases coming to them because of the food that they're eating than because of alcohol, drugs, or tobacco. We have children, not children, but we have young people getting bypasses at age 26 now. We have people having strokes that are in their 30s. We have people getting sick at a younger age. We have the high manifestation of diabetes, and most of this is food related. And you know, there was a Métis doctor at the University of British Columbia that did a traditional food project on Vancouver Island named Dr. Jay Wortman. One of the things that really impressed me in his work was when he returned people to the traditional diet, there was one elder in the community who was having the onset of diabetes and who had high blood pressure. And he was taking medication for both his high blood pressure and for his diabetes. In only 3 days of a traditional diet, the high blood pressure returned to normal and he no longer needed the diabetes medication. I think we need to look at that we are the keepers of food and we are the keepers of the herbal medicine, and we need to make a center like Round Lake, but where we focus on illness. We're graduating more and more medical doctors. There are 28 Native people in medical school in the province right now. I just learned of the 11 Native students in medical school this year. All 11 of them passed their midterm exams. The lowest grade was a B+. Almost all of them got at least an A or an A-. So we're going to medical school. We're getting medical degrees. We can combine that knowledge with our traditional knowledge and make centers of health and healing for ourselves. That's my vision.